Good afternoon, and welcome to our New York Archives Magazine online speaker series. Today, we are joined by former New York Attorney General Robert Abrams and New York State Archivist Tom Ruller as they discuss Abrams' new book, The Luckiest Guy in the World, My Journey in Politics, and how he strove to make a difference for New Yorkers by launching landmark cases on environmental issues such as Love Canal, and creating path-breaking initiatives concerning consumer protection and civil rights. Robert Abrams, born in the Bronx, went on to become a crusading Attorney General of New York from 1979 to 1993. As a reformer, he battled political machine bosses and special interests, winning historic victories for consumers, protecting the environment, and a woman's right to choose. As president of the National Association of Attorneys General, he led attorneys general across the nation to protect the rights of all Americans. In recognition of his contributions to the people of New York State, the Justice Building in Albany was renamed the Robert Abrams Building for Law and Justice. Abrams is a graduate of Columbia College and the New York University School of Law. Tom Ruller has been New York State Archivist since 2015. Tom has been an active professional and is the author of several peer-reviewed journal articles and reviews on the use of technology in archives and the preservation of records in electronic form. He's been a consultant for several state governments and other organizations focusing on electronic records management and preservation. And just an item of housekeeping, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So those of you who are joining us today, please feel free to submit questions throughout using the Q&A box. And we will try to get to as many of those at the end as we can. And without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Robert Abrams and Tom Ruller.
Thank you very much, Josie. And hello, Bob. How are you?
Hi, Tom, great. First of all, can I thank you and the New York State Archives for presenting me with this opportunity to talk about the book and to talk about some issues.
Bob, I have to say thank you. This is a phenomenal book. It's inspiring, it's educational and informative. It tells you things that you wouldn't ordinarily know. And I really enjoyed it. And I'm sure everyone that's going to read this book is really going to enjoy it. It's a wonderful autobiography of what is so far been a fascinating life. What made you decide to write this book now?
Well, very good question. For many years, even when I was Attorney General, I thought, gee, wouldn't it be important to keep a diary, to write a book? And I just never got around to it. And here I was 25 years after elective public office. I continued to try to do some public service and pro bono work, even after I left the Attorney General's office. But here I was decades later, and I looked around and saw that I had grandkids ages from 2 to 22, and every one of them was born after I left public service and public life. So I didn't start out to write a book. I started out to try to convey to my grandchildren, some of the things that happened to me when I was in public life and public office. So there was a wonderful guy in New York who's an oral historian, a brilliant guy at Columbia University, Jerry Albarelli. I was introduced to him, and he came and put in front of me a microphone through a computer and asked me questions, and I started to spill out stuff. And then he would send me transcripts, and I would review the transcripts and do some editing. And after a while, the pages started to pile up. And I said, my Lord, it's beginning to look a little autobiographical and look like a book, and maybe, and so 4 years later, here we are.
Well, it's a wonderful book, and I think it's very timely. I mean, your commitment to public service, your awareness of the role of government in improving the lives of people, your respect for the offices that you've held over the years, really tell a great story and tell us a lot about what public service is and what it means. One of the things I enjoyed about the book, and I think your grandchildren will probably enjoy it even more, is you talk a lot about your formative years growing up in the Bronx, working with your parents and the role that they played in shaping you. You know, I really felt like I got to know your parents, and now your grandchildren are going to get to know their great grandparents through this book. How important were those early years in shaping your perspective on public service?
Tremendously important. We're all the product of our environment, of our households, where we're given genes and we inherited much. We inherit much from our parents and our grandparents. But the outside environment is critically important. What's going on in the household in which you're living and growing up? What's being talked about? What's being said? My grandparents were immigrants. They came from Eastern Europe. They suffered from oppression. They suffered from the czars of Russia, who oppressed members of the Jewish community. We see that same kind of yearning today. To people who are deprived of a decent quality of life, wanting to come to these shores, to breathe free air, to come to this great land of opportunity, to get an education, to provide economically for their children, to get the best that life and the world has to offer. So my upbringing was very important. Social issues, progressive issues, fairness. The world should be a place of fairness. Everybody should be treated equally. My grandparents came, and that was the era of the sweatshop. That was the era of exploitation of people. So I grew up in a household that was sensitive to working conditions and decent working conditions and decency for laborers, paying them a fair wage, organized labor, the whole notion of what America truly is supposed to represent, a land of opportunity. In the old country, in Yiddish, they would say the golden Medina. People dreamed of coming to the golden land, this great country. And I'm so passionate about America. I love this country so much. It is the greatest citadel of freedom on the planet. Sure, we have our imperfections. We know that. We see it in the newspapers and on the media every day, but life is an experiment. That democracy is an experiment, but it's such a noble experiment. And we here are so lucky to be able to live here, to work at making our institutions even better, but working in a country that is committed to democratic values.
Your love of this country comes through in the pages, and your recognition of our role as citizens comes through in those pages. And so I cannot thank you enough for that. I want to switch a little bit to talking about the Attorney General's office. And by the way, today, April 20th, is New York State's 244th birthday. The Constitution of 1777 was adopted on April 20th, 1777. They worked on it, and it was right down the road here in Kingston, New York. One of the principal authors was John Jay. But the role of the Attorney General has evolved significantly in the 244 years that our state has existed. Your tenure as Attorney General can be seen sort of as a watershed period in the evolution of that. Can you talk a little bit about the office that you inherited versus the office as you left it?
I'm afraid I'm going to talk a lot about it, a little too much maybe, because I get very passionate. I spent 15 years of love and toil in that office, and the people of this state gave me such an opportunity. It was such a privilege to become the Attorney General of the state. And I was the 60th Attorney General. And you're right, I was lucky to be there in a period of tremendous ferment and change. And one of the exciting things about the Office of Attorney General is that it's malleable, that it's an office in metamorphosis. Maybe I take a couple of seconds just with a historical backdrop. You're a historian, you're an archivist. This great institution that you're such a vital part of is preserving records so that we will know about our history. So it's a little bit, I think, important to step back a little bit about the history of the Attorney General's office. So America was founded by, Europeans came here to this land, and they colonized it. And England came and helped establish some of the colonies, and it was ruled by a king. And the king was represented by a legal official. A lawyer for the king represented the sovereign. And then came the revolution, and the king was ousted, and democratic form of government was established. So there were 13 colonies and states now, and the sovereign was the state government, and the new leader of the state was the governor, and the governor appointed somebody to take care of the legal business of the state, and that was the attorney general. So the attorney general started out as an appointed official, appointed by the governor. And in the history of this country, as more and more states convened and had constitutional conventions, there began to be a shift from an appointed attorney general to an elected attorney general. And we're in a very interesting place now because most of the states have elected attorneys general, as does New York. But there are a bunch of states that still have attorneys general that are not elected by the people. So most of them are small states: Hawaii, Wyoming, New Hampshire, Alaska, all attorneys general appointed by the governor, and New Jersey. That's a larger state. It's the largest of the gubernatorial appointees as attorney general. And then there are two outlying states. Maine has the legislature every 2 years convene and elect an attorney general. And the real outlier is Tennessee. The Supreme Court of Tennessee meets and picks an attorney general for a fixed term of 8 years. So every state has a different way in which the attorney general becomes the attorney general, has a different set of laws, different constitutions. So the attorney general is different in every state. But there's one thing that's very interesting. Depending upon who the attorney general is at any moment in time, that person can help shape the office, especially on the offensive side. So the core role of the office of attorney general is still what it was way back when the King of England ruled the colony, defending the state. And the state of New York needs defense in a lot of ways because a lot of lawsuits are brought against the state for many reasons. Somebody challenges a statute passed by the legislature. Some company doesn't like a regulation that the Department of Environmental Conservation has instituted. There's a challenge to that. Somebody trips and falls on state property. Somebody in the state university system is passed over looking for promotion, and that person feels I was passed over because I was discriminated against based upon my gender or my sexual orientation or my physical handicap or whatever reason. So there are many ways in which the state needs representation. So that's still the defensive role. And this is what's very interesting because for 150, 200 years, that was the exclusive role of the attorney general. But in the last 50 to 75 years, there has been an expansion of the role of attorney general. The attorney general is not now merely defensive and goes on the offense, doesn't merely defend lawsuits brought against the state, but launches investigations, files lawsuits on behalf of consumers to protect them as consumers in the marketplace, to protect them against civil rights invasions and violations, to protect them against environmental peril. So depending upon who the attorney general is, a lot of things can happen. I was an activist attorney general. I was the first attorney general elected in the state as a Democrat in 40 years. So I brought a progressive orientation to my role. And so, I was for reproductive freedom, protecting a woman's right to choose, to control her own body. I filed briefs in the United States Supreme Court. That was not a traditional role of the attorney general. I testified before Congress 35 times. Nowhere in the Constitution of the state or in the statutes does it say the attorney general should go and testify, but I felt strongly about a lot of issues. So yes, I was there at a moment in time. My predecessor, he began to do certain things, and some attorneys general in the 60s and the 70s began this process of being affirmative. And then it really took hold during my day, especially when Ronald Reagan became president, because he was a laissez-faire president. he campaigned on the motto, get the government off the back of business. And he did what he promised. And so the governmental watchdog was put to sleep. There was no protector at the Federal Trade Commission to protect consumers' rights. There was no protector at the Civil Rights Division to protect people's civil rights. All of the Antitrust Division didn't bring, the head of the Antitrust Division didn't believe even in the antitrust laws, wanted to abolish the antitrust laws. So what happened when the watchdog is put to sleep? The entities crossed the lines, businesses, unscrupulous businesses began to trespass on the rights of people. And so that gave the opportunity for state attorneys general like myself to fill the breach. And I tried to do it in conjunction with other attorneys general. I was respectful of other states, other attorneys general. It didn't matter whether the attorney general was a Republican or a Democrat. It didn't matter whether the attorney general was the head of a legal department of a small state or a large state. And so we began to work together, joint investigations, joint prosecutions, and it was a high watermark. And it's continued to the present time, because during the Trump administration, like the period of the Reagan administration, there was a retrenchment. There was a stepping away, a stepping back from the enforcement of laws to protect people. And the current crop of attorneys general, including with great leadership by the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, she led the way in bringing lawsuits, working with other attorneys general to try to enforce the rights of the people of New York and the people across the country.
And in the book, you speak quite a bit about your relationships with other states' attorneys general. And you were president of the national organization for a period. How important is it to have that connection with those other states in terms of being able to accomplish some of this progressive work?
Very, very important. And frankly, it was historic. We know that the Articles of Confederation failed before we had the formation of the Constitution of the United States, because the states were competing forces. And I had an interesting conversation with the Reagan Attorney General at the time, Ed Meese. He came and met me at a meeting of the National Association of Attorneys General. He said, "Hey, Bob, we may have won the battle, but we lost the war. You guys did it. I didn't think you would be able to do it. I didn't think, there were warring, he thought like it was in the days of the colonial days of the competing forces of the states. I didn't think you guys could get together and cooperate with one another. I didn't think you guys who were Democrats and Republicans would be able to unite and be united and bring these kinds of large, significant cases." And we did. And it was historic. On many occasions, 50 states joined together and brought actions. In it's called resale price maintenance cases, where companies were fixing the price that a company had to charge. That was in violation of the antitrust laws. And all of us brought those cases together. We got refunds for consumers when companies dictated what the price was, instead of the marketplace allowing for competitive forces to operate, to give consumers freedom of choice and buying something at the best and lowest possible price. So it was a historic moment. And it never returned. I think we changed the role of the Attorney General's office for all time. And going forward, looking at it today and going forward, it's going to be, a frontline protector of people's rights. I mean, that's what happened in the Trump administration when with all these issues about immigrants, the federal government clamping down against immigrants, challenging, threatening 5 million young people who were brought here, or were no longer so young, but they were brought here as youngsters, and they're now full-fledged, people in America earning a living, paying taxes, a vibrant part of our economy and our society, and they love our country, and they were living in the shadows of fear of being deported. And so attorneys general stepped into the breach as lots of incursions began to be made by the federal government against the rights and liberties of people. And so the Attorney General today is a very important player in protecting people's rights. And a lot of people get to know attorneys general and therefore elect them as governors and United States senators, and they become members of the cabinet. So the role of Attorney General has changed, I think, for the better, and more importantly, somebody who is a true ally of the average citizen. I mean, this is one of the themes in the book. You know, there's lots that can discourage people today. They feel that an ordinary person can't battle against powerful forces. How are they going to overcome, you know, huge governmental bureaucracies? How are they going to overcome huge corporate powerful interests, you know, fighting against environmental abuse, the Love Canal kind of situation? Well, attorneys general demonstrate that on behalf of the people, they can go and win battles. They can win refunds, put money back into the wallets and pocketbooks of consumers. Before I became Attorney General, there never was a lawsuit to clean up a toxic waste site. Before I left, there were 65 of those lawsuits. Pregnant women were no longer fearful of turning the spigot on the sink, getting water for the child or whatever, because worrying that the water is being contaminated by chemicals that were dumped into the ground and came in contact with the aquifer and contaminating water supply. So and there are a number of messages in the book, and one of them is, you know, ordinary citizens can win battles, you know, if they unite with attorneys general. People in politics doesn't have to be a grubby, you know, business. You know, I viewed getting into politics as a calling, like becoming a doctor, you know, becoming a religious leader. These people are put on a pedestal, and they're respected because they heal and they help. But politicians are viewed, you know, in a negative way. And I think it's just as important to calling as any possible calling. If you do it properly, if you do it with honesty and integrity and good faith, you're out there protecting people in very vital ways. And so, you know, one of the messages from the book is that, you know, to the young people, don't give up on politics. My father ran a candy store. I didn't know powerful people. I ran for the assembly. I was 27 years old, 2 years out of law school. I ran an underfunded campaign. And lo and behold, I beat my local assemblyman, a 17-year incumbent, the chairman of the most powerful committee in the assembly, the Ways and Means Committee. So if I did it, lots of people can do it. And that's one of, you know, a bunch of messages from the book. Don't drop out, roll up your sleeves, get involved in politics and government, work on the staff of a government official, run for the local school board, go and run for public office. I had a fight within my own party. I was a reformer. I was an insurgent. Some of my major battles were against Democrats because I fought the old line machine. They didn't like guys like me because I was trying to do things 100% for the people. The machine believed in you take care of your own. You feather the nest of the people who are in the club. You give nominations, you dole out judgeships, you give no-show jobs, a lot of bad, abusive things that can happen in government and politics. And a lot of people, I was not alone. There were a lot of people who are reform-minded, and we got elected to different offices in the city council, in the state legislature, in Congress. And so lots of changes, you know, can happen in society. That's one of the themes that emerges from the book.
One of the big changes, and you talk a bit about this in the book, and it was one of the most important or central activities when you were Attorney General, is the Love Canal case. You know, Love Canal, the story of Hooker Chemical dumping all of that toxic waste in that abandoned canal near Niagara Falls. And as you just said, you know, it put people at great risk and created situations where people said, I feel powerless about protecting my child and protecting my home. It was an enormous change in the understanding and the role of government in protecting people from natural and hazardous chemicals and all that. And it changed the way the country operates and the country interacts with these hazardous wastes. When you were in the middle of the Love Canal case, did you see that it was going to have this national significance and change the way things are going forward?
No, I had no idea what its implications were. I knew, running for the office of Attorney General, I knew there was an issue up in Western New York about the Love Canal. I was getting briefing papers about it. And so when I became Attorney General, I tried to recruit somebody to head the Environmental Protection Bureau who would have the skills and the commitment and share my view about how urgent it was to have an environmental bureau in the Attorney General's office who would do a lot of different things, help clean up the air, clean the water, but also protect people from the dumping of hazardous chemicals. And I was lucky to get Marcia Cleveland, a woman with a tremendous educational background, and she worked for the NRDC, a great environmental not-for-profit organization. And we got ready to bring the Love Canal lawsuit. And you're right, 40 million pounds over years of dangerous toxic chemicals were covered over, you know, with some clay and grass. And so it hid what was lurking below all of these dangers. And 900 homes were built and schools were built on top of it. And then a couple of enterprising reporters from the Niagara Gazette, the daily newspaper, did some surveys. Gee, a lot of people are getting sick, a lot of kids are getting these dangerous diseases. And then Lois Gibbs, an ordinary citizen, said, you know, my child is getting these respiratory diseases and problems, and other children as well. And she formed the Love Canal Homeowners Association and put a lot of pressure on the government, you know, on the governor of the state. You got to do something about it. Upon the president, Jimmy Carter, you know, buy back some of the homes, relocate some of those families. And lo and behold, you know, the Love Canal became a symbol of this kind of problem. And it existed not just in New York, but all across the country and all over the world. And I used to say that if I went to some foreign land where English was not spoken and I uttered the two words in English, Love Canal, there would be a nodding head in recognition, because as you say, Tom, it became a symbol of a problem that had to be solved. And then the Congress passed very important laws, the CERCLA law, the Comprehensive Emergency Reclamation and Reform Act, that gave additional power to government to go and bring those lawsuits and resources to help clean up in the interim. And so it was a powerful landmark effort that paved the way for lots of other cases like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can personally just say how grateful I am to you and the work that your office did. I grew up in a town with some industries that polluted, and many Superfund sites around where I grew up. And without your work, that Superfund, that you said the more appropriate and accurate technical description of the law, without that, the folks in my town would be suffering. So thank you for that. And you know, you talked about a lot of other cases, a lot of other work that your office did. And within the book, you talk about the corporations division, which wound up being a really important piece of the Attorney General's office and the Charities Bureau and all of that. And were there other sort of cases within your tenure that you would highlight as equally, maybe not equally, but similarly sort of groundbreaking as the Love Canal case?
Well, there were loads. First of all, I didn't do it alone. I mean, I was fortunate to be able to recruit men and women who shared my commitment to public service, and they came to work in the office. I was very moved by the fact that they would leave jobs that they loved. A lot of young lawyers left working in these large Wall Street law firms, taking huge cuts in salary, perhaps earning a third of what they were earning, because they wanted to do the people's work. They wanted to have an agenda of fighting the important battles, protecting consumers, protecting people's civil rights. And so in a whole cluster of areas, you know, antitrust, you say antitrust, it's a technical word, you know, and people's eyes may glaze over. What is antitrust? Well, it's a concept that the Attorney General can utilize to really bring money back to consumers when they're being ripped off by virtue of monopoly. It's conspiracy. Antitrust is the actions by business enterprises, conspiracies, monopolization, fixing prices together, you know, different companies getting together saying that this is going to be the price instead of competitive forces determining what the price is going to be. So we brought loads of antitrust cases, bringing back money into the wild. We brought lots of consumer cases, milk price fixing cases in the downstate area. Millions of dollars were returned to the public interest as a result of, and the practices were reformed as a result of what we did. Charity abuse, this is a very charitable country. And the Attorney General has the role, one of the roles is to protect charitable enterprises. But some people abuse those enterprises and those efforts. And so we brought a lot of important charity cases where if individuals were ripping off, collecting money under the guise of trying to help widows of firefighters or police officers, or widows of fallen victims in our wars, and they were ripping off that money, we would clamp down. But then there were other interesting charitable cases. The Museum of the American Indian. We were able to prevent somebody taking that whole collection of 2 million artifacts, from Native American cultures, from the whole continent of North and South America. Ross Perot was going to bring it to Dallas, Texas, and we fought him in court. And we were able to retain the collection in New York at 155th Street, get a new Bowling Green Museum, the American Indian, have the country have the benefit of a new $100 million museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C., have a $44 million warehouse, climate-controlled warehouse, where the inventory of 2 million artifacts would not be threatened. So, lots of different ways in which the Attorney General, can help ordinary people. The PIM thermometer case, immigrants being abused in Brooklyn in a factory. The federal OSHA law was not being respected. The mercury vapor was being, the workers were being exposed to mercury vapor, and it was in such high levels that when they brought their clothes home at night, their children were threatened by those vapors, and mercury can cause brain damage, permanent brain damage. So, all different ways in which, an activist Attorney General, could be of help to people, in their daily lives.
And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about the book is, and you just mentioned a number of the cases, but there are many more. The activist role that the Attorney General played in bringing justice and bringing protection to people. And it was really, it comes through in the stories you tell, and it's pretty amazing. One of the things that the Attorney General's office does is it produces a lot of documentation. All of these cases sometimes go on for years, and there's a lot of paper, a lot of material that help explain the back and forth and provide the evidence of, and I don't mean evidence in a legal sense, evidence in a different sense, in a non-legal sense, of what happened and how did we get to where we are. When you left office, your office transferred hundreds of boxes of records to the state archives. What are your thoughts on the value of archives and what having archives and that kind of documentation means for future generations?
Well, Tom, I have such respect for you and your colleagues and the institution of the archives. I mean, we as human beings, we have frailties. And just look around us today, the world is still filled with bias. We still have wars going on. We still have discrimination of all kinds. We have economic disparity, that's growing. A great country like ours with such bounty, there should be greater fairness and opportunity for people to share in that bounty. So the way you learn is from the lessons of history. Santayana talked about that, and so many philosophers. And so, I think the records of government are very important to retain. I know that there's some elected officials who go to the shredder rather than to the archives, and I felt those boxes should not go to the shredding machine. They should go to the archives, because nobody is perfect, no institution is perfect. And maybe when students and scholars look at those hundreds of boxes and materials, maybe they'll find that we didn't do everything perfectly. Maybe they'll find that, we made some mistakes, but at least we tried. And we were coming from the right place. We wanted to do the right thing. So I think it's very important to preserve records so that we can learn from our mistakes. We can learn from history. And you guys do an amazing job. I mean, what do you have? 325 or 350 million artifacts or documents in the archive?
Yes. Yep. And we are. and well, I won't do a shameless advertisement for the State Archives, but we're very proud of the materials we protect, and we're very grateful to public officials like you who ensure that we are able to continue to provide that kind of critical evidence and critical information to help people learn how government operates, learn how government has served them, or in some cases not served them. So thank you very much for that. Bob, if you are probably one of the best role models as a public servant. You have demonstrated how someone who worked hard to keep the Yankees in the Bronx, who then took that same philosophy, that same drive of ensuring that people get access to the things that they need, that the resources that people deserve to have are freely and fairly available to them, and move that through your work as Attorney General, protecting the environment and doing all the great things that you did over your career. If you were to give a message to someone who's considering a career in public service today, what would you say to them? Why would they want to enter public service?
Come on in. That's what I was saying. Jump in. First of all, we need you. The society needs you. There are enough problems out there. We need your energy. We need your intelligence. We need your commitment to principle. We need your idealism. Secondly, it's going to be fulfilling. You're going to have fun. You're going to have genuine fulfillment. Each year the Attorney General, since I've been out, has given me the honor and the pleasure of come to speak to summer interns. And that number has been growing. So, and with technology, when I speak in New York City to the 150 interns, it's now simulcast in all the regional offices throughout New York State. And so I deliver this message at the end. I said, we're all given a limited time to be on this planet by the Creator. And there's going to be a moment at the end of our lives when we're going to be lying there, whether it's a hospital bed or a bed in your home, and you're not long for this current world, and you want to feel good. You want to feel that you've made a difference. And when you're in public service, you know that you fought for the public, for something that was larger than you, larger than pecuniary gain. You got to earn a living to provide for your family, but you should have a larger vision of the broader society. In the Jewish community, there's a concept, tikkun olam. There's an obligation put on every member of the community to repair the world, to make this world a better place. So my message to a young person is consider public service. There's an NYU lecture every year of public service in my name, and I try to bring some public official who represents the best in public service to talk about that, to inspire students to say, spend as a lawyer either all or part of your life in public service. Or if you're going to be in the private sector, do pro bono work. There's lots that can be done, that needs to be done. And my message is, it's not only important to do, but it's fulfilling. It's fun. People never checked in with a time clock when they worked with me in the Attorney General's office. They loved their jobs. They came in early and they stayed late. to this day, I'm so moved when people come over to me and say, Bob, you remember who I am? I worked for you. I was assistant attorney general. It was the best job I ever had. I loved working in the attorney general's office. And so that's part of the message. You're doing good. You're doing important things. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And at the end of your life, you're going to feel pretty good about what you did with those limited days.
Wow. That's inspiring. I can't wait for many more people to hear that clip, because that was phenomenal. And thank you. Robert Abrams, your book is called The Luckiest Guy in the World, but I feel that I'm very, very lucky as well for having the opportunity to talk to you and to get to know you and learn from you through your book, through your many years of dedicated public service, which has changed my life and changed the lives of people across this state, not just in the Bronx and not just in the Pelham Parkway area, but across this country and ultimately across the world. The book is phenomenal. I think you can get it on Amazon. And I think all of the proceeds are going to charity, correct?
I'm going to, whatever royalties there will be with respect to this book, they will be given to charitable causes, yes.
Great, great. So Josie, I think we've got a couple of questions that have come in. We left some time at the end to kind of talk through some of those.
We do have some questions, and I think we have a great question that sort of builds on what you were just talking about. You're inspiring people to get involved in the political process. But what would you advise those who wish to get involved in the political process, but are reluctant to do so because of the combative climate?
I know. Well, come and change it. You just can't bemoan the fact, that it's bad, it's ugly, it's tawdry. We need you in. You can't drop out. And you can make a difference. Every person can make a difference. The president of the United States can make a difference. The governor of a state can make a difference. The mayor can make a difference. A member of the legislature can make a difference. A staff person can make a difference. Somebody in a not-for-profit organization can make a difference. Can help somebody, who's got mental stress, prevent that person from perhaps taking his or her own life. Perhaps somebody who's gone astray, to set that individual on the right course. We have all these correctional issues. This country has this disproportionate number of people incarcerated, and we do a terrible job. We put them in prison and they come out even more hardened, or they come out not capable of reforming their lives and leading a better life. We need so much change in our society that there's a role for you. There's a place for you if you like the environment, if you're concerned about civil rights, if you're concerned about women's issues, if you're concerned about discrimination. I mean, there are so many ways in which a person can enter public service, and of course run for office. Throw the rascals out. If there are people who have abandoned the public trust, crossed the line, did something bad, run against that person and raise the issues in the course of a campaign and in public debate. So, my advice is, come on in. We need you. The water's fine. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be meaningful, and you're going to feel good about yourself.
That's great. Very inspiring. We have another question that somebody has asked. The Office of Attorney General has been a stepping stone to governor in New York State. So we've got Spitzer, Cuomo, maybe Letitia James. Did you ever think of running for governor?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it. I loved what I was doing, and I ran for the Senate and came close and didn't quite make it. And it wasn't the greatest campaign run by me, and I talk about it in the book. There's a chapter in the book about it. But I was there for a long time because I believed in the office. I thought in and of itself, if I never did anything else, it would be meaningful. And I'm reminded, this question triggered something in my mind because I read today that Walter Mondale passed away. a great public servant, a wonderful guy from the state of Minnesota. He was the Attorney General of Minnesota, and he became the United States Senator from Minnesota. He became the Vice President. He ran for president against Ronald Reagan, and he lost. And he said something, and others have said the same thing. He said, because I met him on a number of occasions. He said, Bob, Attorney General was the best job I ever had. I mean, I was startled by that. As a man, he became the United States Senator. He was Vice President. He says, the best job I've ever had. Frank Saxby, a Republican, Mondale, a Democrat. He was the Attorney General of Ohio, became the Attorney General of the United States. And he said, State Attorney General was the best job I've ever had. So many people said, Jack Javits said that. He was the United States Senator. And somebody else said it, but this one I got to take it with a grain of salt. Bill Clinton has said that. Well, I mean, I think being president of the United States is a little better than being the Attorney General of Arkansas. But it really speaks to the point how it's a great job. It offers a lot. It offers you a tremendous opportunity. And I stayed there for 15 years. I ran for 4 terms, and you didn't have to necessarily aspire to another office. But, there comes a time very often when you say, is there another opportunity for maybe even more meaningful service? So you may cast your hat in the ring to run for a different post. But in and of itself, it's an enormous challenge, and it's very gratifying.
I just want to say thank you so much to Bob and to Tom for joining us today. It's been a great presentation. I've really enjoyed it. And like I said, we've had a lot of comments from people who have been watching who really enjoyed it. So thank you so much. It is our privilege to make these events available to you out there who joined us today and to keep New York State's history alive. If you're interested in the content we create and would like to see some more of it at New York Archives Magazine, please contact us at aptrust@nysed.gov to receive a free past issue of New York Archives Magazine. And please join us on September 23rd for an engaging evening of conversation between New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who we just mentioned, and Robert Abrams as they discuss Abrams' life, law, and the vital role of the Office of Attorney General in protecting the rights of all Americans. To learn more about that program, you can visit our website. Again, that's nysarchivestrust.org. Thank you very much once again, Bob and Tom, and to all of those of you who joined us today. And I hope you have a wonderful day.